To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation. Vernon Herring stood at his office window on the 42nd floor, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a chessboard. At 38, he had built Herring Dynamics from nothing into a multi-million-dollar defense contracting company. His methodical mind and ruthless business acumen had earned him respect and fear in equal measure. Those who knew him well understood one fundamental truth. Vernon Herring never forgot a slight, and he never forgave betrayal. The mahogany desk behind him held photos of his family. His wife Claire Doherty Herring, elegant and stunning at 34, and their 8-year-old daughter Emma, whose bright eyes mirrored his own steel-gray determination. Claire had been a socialite when they met, the daughter of old money who'd married beneath her station, or so her family believed. Vernon had proven them all wrong, building an empire that dwarfed her family's inherited wealth. "Mr. Herring?" His assistant knocked softly. "Your wife called. She wanted to remind you about the charity gala tonight." Vernon nodded without turning. Claire lived for these events, the glamour, the attention, the endless networking opportunities. She'd transformed from the shy debutante he'd married into a social butterfly who thrived on admiration. Something had changed in their marriage over the past year, a distance that Vernon attributed to his long hours and her growing independence. What he didn't know was that Claire's independence had a name: Nicholas Cabrera. At 36, Nicholas was everything Vernon wasn't: charming, spontaneous, and dangerously handsome. He'd met Claire at a gallery opening 6 months ago, and their affair had been swift and intoxicating. Where Vernon was calculated and reserved, Nicholas was passionate and impulsive. He worked as an art dealer, moving in the same social circles that Claire had embraced, understanding her need for excitement in ways her methodical husband never could. That evening, as Vernon adjusted his black tie in their bedroom mirror, Claire emerged from her walk-in closet in a stunning emerald gown that hugged her curves perfectly. Her auburn hair was swept up elegantly, and diamond earrings, a gift from Vernon for their 10th anniversary, caught the light. "You look beautiful," Vernon said, meaning it. Despite the distance between them, he still found his wife breathtaking. Claire smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Thank you. Are you ready?" 8-year-old Emma bounded into the room wearing her pajamas, her blonde curls bouncing. "Mommy, you look like a princess." Claire's expression softened genuinely as she knelt to hug her daughter. "Thank you, sweetheart. Mrs. Patterson will be here soon to watch you." Vernon lifted Emma into his arms. "Be good for Mrs. Patterson, okay? We'll be back late." "I will, Daddy. Have fun at your fancy party." The innocence in his daughter's voice made Vernon's chest tighten. Emma was his world, the one pure thing in his increasingly complicated life. If he'd known this would be one of their last conversations, he would have held her longer. Chapter 2. Fractures in Paradise. The Winston Hotel ballroom glittered with the city's elite, all gathered for the Children's Hospital Charity Gala. Vernon moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his reputation opening doors and commanding respect. Claire worked the rooms separately, her laughter carrying across the space as she charmed donors and socialites alike. Vernon was deep in conversation with Senator Hayes about a potential defense contract when he noticed Claire's phone buzzing insistently on their table. She was across the room, animated in discussion with a group of younger philanthropists. The phone buzzed again, and Vernon glanced at the screen. "Emma, sick," appeared in the text preview from Mrs. Patterson. Vernon immediately excused himself and crossed the room to Claire. "Claire," Mrs. Patterson texted. "Emma's sick." Claire glanced at her phone, frowning. "She probably just has a stomachache." "Mrs. Patterson worries too much. Maybe we should call." "Vernon, relax. It's probably nothing. This is the biggest fundraiser of the year." Claire's dismissive tone surprised him, but before he could respond, the evening's program began. What Vernon didn't see was Nicholas Cabrera watching from across the room, his dark eyes following Claire's every movement. Nicholas had been careful to avoid these types of events where Claire appeared with her husband, but tonight was different. Tonight, he was planning to tell Claire he was ready to leave his own marriage for her. Nicholas's wife, Erica Beasley Cabrera, stood beside him, oblivious to her husband's wandering attention. A successful pediatric surgeon, Erica was everything Nicholas claimed to want: intelligent, accomplished, and devoted. but she lacked the fire that drew him to Claire, the dangerous thrill of the forbidden. The evening progressed with speeches and auction items, Vernon's mind periodically drifting to Emma despite Claire's reassurances. During the silent auction, he stepped outside to call home. Mrs. Patterson answered on the first ring. "Mr. Herring, thank goodness. Emma's been throwing up for the past hour, and now she's having trouble breathing. I think you should come home." Vernon's blood chilled. "We're leaving now. If it gets worse, call 911. He rushed back inside to find Claire laughing with a group of women, including Erica Cabrera, though neither woman knew their connection through Nicholas. "Claire, we need to go. Emma's really sick." Claire's expression shifted to annoyance. "Vernon, can't Mrs. Patterson handle it? Dr. Morrison is here tonight. He's going to announce a major donation, and I promised I'd introduce him to the Westfield Foundation people." Vernon stared at his wife, seeing something in her eyes he'd never noticed before, a cold calculation that prioritized her social standing over their daughter's welfare. "Our daughter is having trouble breathing, Claire." "Fine," she sighed dramatically. "But you owe me for this." The 20-minute drive home felt like hours. Vernon's hands gripped the steering wheel while Claire checked her phone and complained about missing the evening's climax. When they pulled into their driveway, Mrs. Patterson met them at the door, her face pale with worry. "She's gotten worse, Mr. Herring. She's in the kitchen. She couldn't make it upstairs." Vernon rushed inside to find Emma collapsed on the kitchen floor, her small body convulsing as she gasped for air. Her lips had a blue tinge that sent terror through his veins. "Call 911, he shouted, dropping to his knees beside his daughter. Chapter 3, The Breaking Point. Emma lay gasping on the cold kitchen tiles, her tiny body fighting for each breath. Vernon cradled her head in his lap, his hands shaking as he tried to comfort her while Mrs. Patterson dialed 911. The elegance of the evening felt like a cruel joke now. His bow tie seemed to be choking him as he watched his daughter struggle. "Mommy," Emma whispered, reaching out with trembling fingers. Claire stood in the doorway, still in her emerald gown, her phone clutched in her hand. The screen was lit with text messages, and Vernon could see she was typing responses even as their daughter fought for breath. "Claire," Vernon's voice cracked with desperation. "Put the phone down and help me." Claire looked up, irritation flashing across her features. "I'm handling something important, Vernon." Mrs. Patterson called the ambulance. "Important?" Vernon couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Our daughter is dying." But Claire had already turned away, her phone pressed to her ear. "Nicholas, I can't talk right now." "No, we had to leave early." "Yes, it's family drama." Vernon's world tilted. "Nicholas." The name hit him like a physical blow, but he forced himself to focus on Emma. Her breathing was becoming more labored, her small face turning an alarming shade of blue. The paramedics arrived within minutes, their efficient movements taking over the kitchen. Vernon watched helplessly as they worked on Emma, inserting in 4 and placing an oxygen mask over her tiny face. The lead paramedic, a weathered man named Mike, looked grim. "We need to get her to Children's Hospital immediately. This looks like severe anaphylactic shock." As they loaded Emma into the ambulance, Vernon realized Claire wasn't following. She stood in their foyer, still on her phone, her voice low and urgent. "I can't miss Dr. Morrison's announcement, honey. Just take her to the hospital. I'll meet you there after the party ends." Vernon felt something inside him break, not just crack, but shatter completely. His wife was choosing a social event over their dying daughter's life. He watched her grab her purse and head for the door, her heels clicking against the marble floor with callous determination. "Where are you going?" Vernon's voice was barely controlled. "Back to the gala. Dr. Morrison specifically requested I introduce him to the board members. This could mean millions for the hospital foundation, Vernon. I can't just abandon my commitments." She kissed his cheek perfunctorily and walked out, leaving Vernon to climb into the ambulance alone with their daughter. The next 3 hours blurred together in a nightmare of sterile hallways, frantic doctors, and machines that beeped ominously. Vernon never left Emma's side, holding her small hand as teams of specialists worked to save her life. Dr. Sarah Chun, the attending pediatrician, explained that Emma had gone into severe anaphylactic shock, likely triggered by a new medication Mrs. Patterson had given her for what seemed like a simple fever. "We're doing everything we can, Mr. Herring," Dr. Chun said gently. But the reaction was severe, and the delay in treatment. Vernon's phone buzzed with texts from Claire complaining about having to make excuses for his absence. Photos from the gala flooded social media, Claire smiling and posing with donors, her earlier concerns about Emma apparently forgotten entirely. At 11:47 p.m., the machines flatlined. Dr. Chin appeared at Vernon's side, her face grave with compassion and defeat. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Herring. We did everything we could, but we couldn't save her. The anaphylactic shock caused too much damage to her respiratory system." Vernon stared at his daughter's peaceful face, so small on the hospital bed. Emma looked like she was sleeping, her blonde curls spread across the pillow. The rage that built in his chest was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, cold, calculating, and absolute. He called Claire with trembling fingers. "Vernon, finally, you'll never guess what happened. Dr. Morrison donated $12 million. And the Westfield Foundation wants to partner with us on the new wing. I'm at the after party at the Meridian Club with all the major players." This night turned out even better than. Emma's dead. The line went silent for a moment. Then Vernon heard Claire's laughter in the background, champagne glasses clinking. "What did you say? I can barely hear you over the music." "Our daughter is dead, Claire. Emma died 20 minutes ago." Another pause, then Claire's voice returned, annoyed rather than anguished. "That's not funny, Vernon. Stop being dramatic. I'll be home in a few hours." The line went dead. Vernon sat in the hospital chair beside Emma's body, staring at his phone. His wife was laughing. Their daughter had just died, and Claire was laughing at a party. The sound echoed in his memory, mixing with Emma's final whispered, "Mommy," to create a symphony of betrayal that would drive everything he did from this moment forward. As he signed the paperwork and made arrangements with the funeral director, Vernon Herring began to plan. The methodical mind that had built an empire would now be turned toward a different purpose: the complete and utter destruction of everyone who had betrayed his daughter's memory. And Claire had no idea what he would do next. Chapter 4: The Hunt Begins. 2 weeks after Emma's funeral, Vernon sat in his study, surrounded by grief and rage. The service had been a small affair. Claire had insisted on limiting the guest list to avoid overwhelming attention during her period of private mourning. What she really meant was that a large funeral would interfere with her social calendar. Vernon had watched his wife play the grieving mother perfectly, accepting condolences with practiced grace while checking her phone for messages. The same phone that had been more important than their dying daughter. The same phone that contained secrets Vernon was now determined to uncover. His home office felt different now, transformed from a workspace into a war room. Vernon had always been thorough in business, but grief had sharpened his focus to a razor's edge. Emma's empty room down the hall served as a constant reminder of what he'd lost and why he could never forgive. The investigation began with Claire's phone records, easily obtained through his corporate connections. What he found confirmed his worst suspicions. For 6 months, Claire had been in constant contact with Nicholas Cabrera, hundreds of texts, calls at odd hours, and deleted message threads that Vernon's IT specialist had recovered. The messages painted a picture of a woman he barely recognized. Claire described their marriage as suffocating and Vernon as emotionally absent. She fantasized about leaving him for Nicholas, about starting fresh with someone who understood her passion for life. Most damning was a text sent 3 days before Emma died. "I can't wait much longer, Nicholas. I need to be free of this life." Vernon studied Nicholas Cabrera's background with the same methodical approach he used for business acquisitions. 36 years old, married to Dr. Erica Beasley Cabrera for 8 years, no children by choice. Nicholas ran a small but successful art gallery that specialized in contemporary pieces, catering to wealthy collectors who valued both discretion and prestige. What made Nicholas particularly useful for Vernon's plans was his weakness: gambling. Nicholas had accumulated significant debts at underground poker games, borrowing against his gallery's inventory to fund his addiction. His marriage to Erica provided financial stability, but his affair with Claire offered something more dangerous: excitement. Vernon's first move was subtle. Through a shell company, he began purchasing pieces from Nicholas's gallery, always paying above market value and expressing interest in larger acquisitions. To Nicholas, Vernon Herring was simply another wealthy collector who appreciated fine art. The irony wasn't lost on Vernon that he was funding the lifestyle that had stolen his wife. Meanwhile, Claire seemed oblivious to Vernon's knowledge of her betrayal. She maintained her routine of charity events and social gatherings, though Vernon noticed she'd become more secretive about her schedule. She spent longer on her phone, took more errands that lasted hours, and showed less interest in maintaining even the facade of their marriage. The breaking point came when Vernon discovered Claire's plans for Emma's memorial fund. Instead of the scholarship program they'd discussed, Claire had redirected the donations toward a new wing at the Museum of Fine Arts, a project that would prominently feature Nicholas's gallery as the exclusive art procurement partner. Vernon realized with crystal clarity that his wife was using their daughter's death to advance her affair. The betrayal was so complete, so callous, that it crystallized his resolve. Claire and Nicholas wouldn't just lose their relationship, they would lose everything. He began with Dr. Erica Beasley Cabrera. Chapter 5. The Doctor's Dilemma. Dr. Erica Beasley Cabrera was everything Vernon had expected from Nicholas's wife. Brilliant, dedicated, and completely unaware of her husband's betrayal. At 34, she headed the pediatric surgery department at Children's Hospital, the same hospital where Emma had died. The irony of the connection wasn't lost on Vernon as he planned his approach. Vernon's first meeting with Dr. Beasley Cabrera was arranged through legitimate channels. As a major donor to Children's Hospital, grief had made him generous with Emma's memorial fund. Vernon requested a consultation about improving emergency response protocols. He wanted to ensure no other child would suffer Emma's fate due to delayed treatment. Dr. Beasley Cabrera met him in her office, a modest space filled with medical journals and photos of successful surgeries. What struck Vernon immediately was her compassion, genuine concern for his loss, professional insight into emergency procedures, and a warmth that made her husband's betrayal even more despicable. "Mr. Herring, I want you to know how sorry I am for your loss," she said, her dark eyes reflecting authentic sympathy. Emma's case was reviewed by our entire emergency department. Dr. Chun did everything possible given the circumstances. Vernon nodded, playing the grieving father while studying his target. "I understand the medical team wasn't at fault, but the delay in getting her here. If parents were better educated about anaphylactic shock symptoms, maybe other children could be saved." Their conversation lasted 2 hours, covering emergency protocols, parent education programs, and funding initiatives. Dr. Beasley Cabrera was passionate about her work, describing cases where quick action had saved lives and lamenting those where delays proved fatal. "Time is everything in pediatric emergencies," she emphasized. "Minutes can mean the difference between full recovery and—" She paused, realizing the sensitivity of her words. "And death," Vernon finished quietly. "Yes, Dr. Beasley Cabrera. I learned that lesson too late." What Vernon also learned was that Dr. Beasley Cabrera worked late most evenings, often staying until 9 or 10 p.m. to complete surgeries and check on patients. Her dedication to saving children's lives stood in stark contrast to her husband's casual betrayal of their marriage vows. Over the following weeks, Vernon established a pattern of evening visits to discuss the Memorial Fund projects. Dr. Beasley Cabrera, "Please, call me Erica," welcomed his input and commitment to improving pediatric care. She had no way of knowing that Vernon was carefully mapping her schedule, understanding when Nicholas had windows of opportunity for his affair. The information proved invaluable. Nicholas typically visited Claire on Tuesday and Thursday evenings when Erica worked late, and Saturday afternoons when she attended medical conferences. They met at Claire's yoga studio, a private facility that closed early, giving them 3 hours of uninterrupted time. Vernon's second strategic move involved Jackie Glass, his private investigator. Jackie was a former police detective who specialized in discreet surveillance for high-profile clients. She'd helped Vernon with background checks on potential business partners, but this assignment was personal. "I need comprehensive documentation," Vernon instructed Jackie during their meeting at his office. "Photos, videos, audio recordings if possible. I want evidence that would stand up in any legal proceeding." Jackie nodded professionally. "Standard infidelity case. How detailed do you want the documentation?" "Extremely detailed. I want dates, times, locations, and patterns of behavior. I also need background information on Nicholas Cabrera, financial records, business dealings, personal habits. Everything. Time frame. Take as long as necessary to be thorough. I'm not in a rush." Vernon's calm tone belied the fury burning inside him. But when you're finished, I want enough evidence to destroy them completely. Jackie's investigation revealed the full scope of Claire and Nicholas's relationship. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning a future together. Text messages recovered from Nicholas's phone showed discussions about leaving their respective spouses after the appropriate mourning period for Emma had passed. The casual way they discussed his daughter's death as a timing consideration rather than a tragedy filled Vernon with a cold rage that went beyond simple betrayal. They saw Emma's death as an opportunity, a chance to restructure their lives without the inconvenience of a child complicating their plans. But the most damaging evidence came from audio recordings of their conversations at the yoga studio. Jackie had placed listening devices during a routine maintenance visit, and the conversations they captured revealed the true depth of Claire and Nicholas's callousness. I feel terrible about Emma, of course. Claire's voice was clear on the recording. But Vernon's so withdrawn now. He barely speaks to me. Maybe this is the universe telling us it's time to move forward with our plans. Nicholas's response made Vernon's hands clench into fists. Your daughter's death might actually make the divorce cleaner. Vernon will be so focused on grief, he won't fight as hard for assets. We can be together sooner than we thought. Vernon played the recording 3 times, each repetition strengthening his resolve. They were using Emma's death as a strategic advantage. The betrayal was so complete, so utterly without redemption, that Vernon felt his last vestiges of mercy evaporate. By the end of the month, Vernon had everything he needed: financial records showing Nicholas's gambling debts, photographic evidence of the affair, audio recordings of their callous conversations, and detailed documentation of their plans to abandon their respective spouses. But Vernon wasn't planning a simple divorce. Claire and Nicholas had turned his daughter's death into their opportunity for happiness. Now Vernon would turn their happiness into their destruction. Chapter 6. The Setup. Vernon's plan required patience and precision, qualities that had served him well in business and would now serve him in revenge. The key was making Claire and Nicholas believe their betrayal remained undiscovered while simultaneously positioning them for complete destruction. The first phase involved Claire's trust fund. As part of their prenuptial agreement, Claire maintained access to her family's money through a complex trust structure that Vernon had never bothered to examine closely. Now, with the help of his forensic accountant, Vernon discovered interesting vulnerabilities in the trust's management. Claire's father, Randolph Doherty, had established the trust with specific clauses about moral conduct and family obligations. The language was archaic by modern standards, but legally binding. Adultery, abandonment of family duties, and behavior detrimental to the family name could trigger forfeiture of trust benefits. Vernon arranged a lunch meeting with Randolph at the exclusive Montclair Club. At 72, Claire's father was old-fashioned in his values, but sharp in his business sense. He'd never warmed to Vernon, considering him new money, but he respected his success. I appreciate you taking time to see me, Randolph, Vernon began carefully. I wanted to discuss Claire's memorial fund contributions and some concerns I have about the direction she's taking. Randolph listened as Vernon outlined Claire's plans for the museum wing, carefully omitting any mention of Nicholas while highlighting the departure from their agreed-upon scholarship program. She's been different since Emma's death, Vernon continued, allowing genuine grief to color his voice. Distant, secretive. I'm worried about her judgment during this difficult time. The conversation planted seeds of doubt about Claire's current behavior while positioning Vernon as the concerned husband. Randolph agreed to monitor the trust's expenditures more closely, unknowingly preparing the groundwork for Claire's eventual financial ruin. Meanwhile, Vernon focused on Nicholas's gambling problem. Through careful research, he identified the underground poker games Nicholas frequented, high-stakes affairs held in private clubs and wealthy homes. Using contacts from his defense contracting work, Vernon arranged to be invited to several games. Nicholas proved to be exactly what Vernon expected: reckless, overconfident, and terrible at reading people. Over several weeks, Vernon established himself as a fellow player while carefully observing Nicholas's patterns. The man bet emotionally, chased losses, and had several significant tells that Vernon cataloged for future use. The crucial element was Victor Santini, the man who ran the largest underground poker network in the city. Santini was connected to serious money and serious consequences for players who couldn't pay their debts. Vernon approached him with a business proposition disguised as a personal favor. "I'm looking to host some private games for potential business partners," Vernon explained during their meeting at a downtown restaurant. "High-stakes affairs where deals get made over cards. I'd need your expertise in organizing and managing the games." Santini was intrigued by the prospect of legitimate business cover for his operations. Vernon's reputation and connections offered opportunities for expansion into more respectable circles. They agreed to a partnership that would give Vernon significant influence over the games Nicholas frequented. The third component of Vernon's plan involved Dr. Erica Beasley Cabrera, though she remained unaware of her role. Vernon continued their weekly meetings about Emma's memorial fund, each conversation providing more insight into her marriage and schedule. Erica mentioned in passing that Nicholas had been working late more often, traveling for art acquisitions, and seemed distracted during their limited time together. "Marriage is challenging when both partners have demanding careers," Vernon observed sympathetically. "Claire and I struggled with that balance too." Erica nodded, her expression troubled. "Nicholas used to be more present. Lately, he seems to be somewhere else even when he's home. I keep telling myself it's just stress from the gallery, but..." Vernon offered understanding nods while internally cataloging every detail. Erica's growing suspicions about her husband's behavior would be useful when the time came to reveal the truth. The final element was Claire herself. Vernon began subtly encouraging her independence, suggesting she pursue more ambitious social projects and supporting her increased involvement in various committees and boards. To Claire, Vernon's encouragement seemed like recognition of her capabilities. In reality, he was giving her more rope with which to hang herself. Claire responded predictably, spending more time away from home and becoming increasingly bold about her affair. She started taking weekend trips with girlfriends, attending evening events that lasted until the early morning hours, and showing less concern about maintaining appearances. Vernon documented everything through Jackie Glass's continued surveillance, while playing the role of the grieving husband who was throwing himself into work to cope with loss. Friends and family saw him as admirable in his stoic handling of tragedy, while Claire appeared increasingly selfish and frivolous in comparison. By December, 6 months after Emma's death, Vernon had assembled all the pieces of his plan. Claire and Nicholas believed they were successfully managing their secret relationship while preparing for their future together. Dr. Erica Beasley Cabrera suspected her husband was having an affair but lacked proof. Victor Santini was planning several high-stakes poker games that would give Vernon control over Nicholas's financial fate. None of them understood that they were all pieces on Vernon's chessboard, positioned exactly where he needed them for the final moves of his game. The methodical mind that had built an empire would now demonstrate what happened to those who betrayed Vernon Herring's family. Emma's memory deserved nothing less than complete and total revenge. Chapter 7. The Trap Closes. The Christmas charity auction at the Meridian Club provided the perfect setting for Vernon's plan to begin its final phase. The event brought together the city's elite, including many of the underground poker players Vernon had been cultivating. More importantly, it was the kind of high-profile social gathering where Claire felt most comfortable and most reckless. Vernon arrived early, positioning himself strategically near the silent auction tables. He wore his public mask of the grieving father with practiced ease, accepting condolences and praise for his memorial fund work. Everyone commented on how well he was handling his loss, how admirable his dedication to improving pediatric care had become. Claire arrived 20 minutes later, stunning in a black cocktail dress that was appropriately somber, yet undeniably elegant. She worked the room with renewed confidence, her involvement in the Museum Wing project having elevated her status among the art community. What she didn't realize was that Vernon had been carefully monitoring every aspect of the project, including its financial irregularities. Nicholas entered separately, as always, accompanied by Dr. Erica Beasley Cabrera. Vernon watched as Nicholas's eyes immediately sought Claire across the room, the hunger in his gaze obvious to anyone who knew what to look for. Erica, resplendent in navy blue, seemed oblivious to her husband's wandering attention as she greeted colleagues and donors. "Vernon, how are you holding up?" Dr. Beasley Cabrera approached with genuine concern. "I know the holidays must be especially difficult. Each day is a challenge." Vernon replied truthfully, though not in the way she imagined. But the memorial fund work helps. Knowing that Emma's legacy might save other children provides some comfort. Their conversation was interrupted by Victor Santini, dressed respectably in a tailored suit that disguised his more dangerous connections. Mr. Herring, I wanted to thank you again for hosting next week's game. My associates are looking forward to meeting some of your business partners. Vernon nodded politely, aware that several people were listening. I'm happy to facilitate introductions, Victor. Building relationships is essential in any industry. Dr. Beasley Cabrera excused herself, but Vernon noticed her troubled expression as she glanced toward her husband, who was now engaged in animated conversation with Claire near the bar. The seeds of suspicion Vernon had been carefully watering were beginning to sprout. The evening progressed according to Vernon's expectations. Claire and Nicholas maintained their careful public distance while exchanging meaningful glances and subtle touches when they thought no one was watching. Jackie Glass, positioned as a photographer for the society pages, captured every interaction with telephoto precision. During the auction presentation, Vernon announced a significant addition to Emma's memorial fund, a $1 million contribution that drew gasps of admiration from the crowd. My daughter loved helping others, he said into the microphone, his voice carrying perfect grief. This fund will ensure that other children receive the emergency care Emma needed. Claire beamed beside him, basking in the reflected glow of his generosity and the admiring attention of their peers. She had no idea that the money came from liquidating several investments she'd expected to inherit, or that the fund's true purpose was to expose her mismanagement of the museum project. After the formal presentations, Vernon made his way to Nicholas, who was admiring a sculpture near the gallery display. Beautiful piece, Vernon commented, studying the bronze figure. You have an excellent eye for art, Mr. Cabrera. Nicholas turned, surprised to be addressed by Vernon Herring. Thank you, Mr. Herring. I actually recommended this piece for the auction. Art has always been my passion. I can see that. In fact, I've been following your gallery's work. Very impressive portfolio. Vernon's tone was friendly, almost admiring. I'm always looking for investment opportunities in the arts. Perhaps we could discuss your upcoming projects sometime. The conversation lasted 15 minutes, during which Vernon established himself as a potential major client, while carefully probing Nicholas's financial situation. Nicholas was eager to please, mentioning several expensive acquisitions he was considering and hinting at cash flow challenges that limited his ability to pursue larger opportunities. I'd be very interested in hearing more about your acquisition plans, Vernon concluded. Why don't you join me for poker next Thursday? I host a small game for business associates. Very discreet, high-quality conversation. Nicholas's eyes lit up at the invitation. Being included in Vernon Herring's private poker game would elevate his status considerably. I'd be honored to join you. As they shook hands, Vernon felt the satisfaction of a trap perfectly set. Nicholas had no idea he'd just accepted an invitation to his own destruction. The evening concluded with Claire and Nicholas maintaining their careful charade while Vernon observed every interaction. During the drive home, Claire was unusually animated, describing the evening's success and the positive response to their museum project. Did you see how impressed everyone was with the Memorial Fund announcement? She asked, touching up her lipstick in the passenger mirror. Emma would be proud of the legacy we're building. Vernon's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Claire's casual use of we when describing a project she was corrupting for her lover's benefit filled him with cold fury. Emma's legacy was being prostituted for an affair. Yes, he said quietly. Emma would want her memory to help expose the truth about people. Claire missed the deeper meaning entirely, continuing to chatter about future events and social obligations. Vernon let her talk while mentally reviewing the next phase of his plan. Thursday's poker game would begin Nicholas's financial destruction, while Friday would bring revelations that would shatter Dr. Erica Beasley Cabrera's marriage and Claire's carefully constructed facade. The trap had been 2 months in the making, with every element precisely positioned. Now Vernon would demonstrate what happened to those who betrayed his family and used his daughter's death for their own purposes. Emma's memory would be avenged, and neither Claire nor Nicholas would escape the consequences of their callous betrayal. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Thursday evening's poker game was held in Vernon's private study, the same room where he'd planned his revenge. The irony wasn't lost on him as he arranged the table where Nicolas Cabrera would lose everything. 8 players attended, all wealthy businessmen with reputations to protect and money to burn. Victor Santini managed the game with professional discretion, ensuring proper atmosphere for both business and destruction. Nicolas arrived precisely on time, clearly nervous but excited about the opportunity. He dressed carefully in an expensive suit that Vernon recognized as being beyond his actual means, another indicator of the financial pressure that would make him vulnerable. "Gentlemen, welcome to our December game," Vernon announced as the players took their seats. "Tonight's stakes are 50,000 buy-in, unlimited rebuys for qualified players." Nicolas's composure slipped slightly at the stakes announcement, but pride prevented him from backing down. Vernon had researched his target's ego carefully. Nicolas would never admit he couldn't afford to play at this level, especially in front of potential business connections. The game began innocuously, with Vernon playing conservatively while observing Nicolas's tells and betting patterns. The other players were skilled but not predatory, wealthy men who could afford to lose and played primarily for entertainment. Nicolas was clearly outclassed but tried to compensate with aggressive betting and psychological intimidation. By midnight, Nicolas had lost his initial buy-in and borrowed another 50,000 against his gallery's assets. Vernon had carefully arranged for the credit to be available, with Victor Santini providing financing at interest rates that would cripple Nicolas's business if not repaid quickly. "Rough night," Vernon commented sympathetically as Nicolas signed the loan documents. "Sometimes the cards just don't cooperate." "I'll turn it around," Nicolas replied grimly. "I can read people better than anyone at this table." Vernon smiled inwardly. Nicolas couldn't read anyone, especially not Vernon, who had been deliberately projecting weakness while holding premium hands. The next 2 hours confirmed Vernon's assessment as Nicolas lost the second buy-in and borrowed a third, then a fourth. By 3 a.m., Nicolas owed $200,000 to Victor Santini's organization, with his gallery and personal assets as collateral. His hands shook as he signed the final loan agreement, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool temperature. "Don't worry about the timeline," Vernon said quietly as the other players prepared to leave. "Victor's organization is reasonable about repayment schedules, especially for people with good character." Nicolas nodded gratefully, unaware that Vernon controlled every aspect of the debt structure. The loans were designed to be impossible to repay through normal business operations, ensuring that Nicolas would face increasingly desperate choices in the coming weeks. Friday morning brought the second phase of Vernon's plan. Dr. Erica Beasley Cabrera received an anonymous package at her office containing photographs, audio transcripts, and detailed documentation of her husband's affair. Vernon had agonized over involving an innocent woman in his revenge, but Erica deserved to know the truth about her marriage. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Photos of Nicolas and Claire embracing outside the yoga studio, audio recordings of their callous conversations about Emma's death, financial records showing Nicolas using their joint accounts to fund gifts for his mistress. Vernon had included a note explaining that the sender was someone who believed Dr. Beasley Cabrera deserved better than a husband who used their daughter's death as timing for his affair. Jackie Glass monitored Erica's response from across the street. The doctor left work early, driving directly to Nicolas's gallery with the evidence folder clutched in her hands. The confrontation lasted 30 minutes, with raised voices audible from the street before Erica stormed out, leaving Nicolas standing among his art pieces like a broken sculpture himself. Vernon received Jackie's report with grim satisfaction. Erica Beasley Cabrera would file for divorce by Monday, taking half of Nicolas's remaining assets and eliminating his financial safety net. Combined with the poker debts, Nicolas would face complete ruin within weeks. But Vernon wasn't finished. Saturday brought the revelation that would destroy Claire's world. Vernon had arranged for her father, Randolph Doherty, to review the museum project's financial records under the pretense of ensuring proper memorial fund management. What Randolph discovered was systematic embezzlement. Claire had been redirecting memorial donations toward personal accounts and using trust fund money to pay for luxury items that Nicolas presented as gifts. The financial forensics showed a clear pattern of theft and fraud, with Claire using Emma's memorial fund as her personal bank account for affair-related expenses. Hotel rooms, jewelry, weekend trips. all funded through donations meant to honor a dead child's memory. Randolph's call came Sunday morning, his voice shaking with rage and disbelief. "Vernon, I need you to come to my office immediately. We need to discuss Claire's activities with the Memorial Fund." Vernon drove to the Doherty family offices with carefully prepared shock and indignation. Randolph's evidence was damning. Bank records, forged signatures, diverted donations totaling nearly $500,000 stolen from Emma's Memorial Fund. "I can't believe my own daughter would steal from a children's charity," Randolph said, his face gray with shame. "Using her dead child's memory to fund personal luxuries. It's beyond comprehension." Vernon played his role perfectly, expressing horror and betrayal while internally celebrating the completeness of his trap. Claire's theft from Emma's Memorial Fund was the final piece of evidence needed to trigger the trust fund forfeiture clauses and ensure criminal prosecution. "What do we do now?" Vernon asked, his voice heavy with manufactured grief. "The trust is immediately frozen pending investigation," Randolph replied. "And I'm afraid this goes beyond family discipline. Stealing from a registered charity is a felony. Claire will face criminal charges." By Sunday evening, Claire's world was collapsing. Nicholas had confessed the affair to save himself from his wife's divorce proceedings, the trust fund was frozen, and Randolph Doherty had contacted the district attorney about pressing charges for charity fraud. Claire returned home to find Vernon waiting in his study, surrounded by evidence of her betrayal. Bank records, photographs, audio recordings, and legal documents covered every surface. Her face went white as she realized the scope of what he knew. "You've been planning this," she whispered, sinking into a chair. "For months," Vernon confirmed calmly. "Ever since I discovered you were using our daughter's death to plan your new life with Nicholas." Claire's composure cracked completely. "Vernon, I can explain." "No explanations," Vernon cut her off. "Emma died gasping for breath while you planned your affair. You used her memorial fund to pay for hotel rooms with your lover. You turned our daughter's legacy into your personal entertainment budget." The truth hung between them like a blade. Claire tried to speak, but Vernon's cold fury silenced her. "Nicholas owes $200,000 to people who break legs for late payments. Erica Beasley Cabrera is divorcing him and taking half his assets. Your trust fund is frozen, and you're facing felony charges for charity fraud. Your lover is ruined, and you're about to be imprisoned." Claire stared at him with growing horror. "What about us? What about our marriage?" Vernon's smile was as cold as winter. "Our marriage died with Emma, Claire. Now you get to discover what happens to people who betray my family." The reckoning had begun, and Vernon Herring never forgave. Chapter 9. No Mercy. 6 months later, Vernon stood in the same courthouse where Claire's divorce proceedings had concluded. Justice moved slowly, but it moved with devastating thoroughness when properly motivated. Vernon's influence and connections had ensured that every aspect of Claire and Nicholas's destruction was legally airtight and publicly humiliating. Claire had pled guilty to charity fraud to avoid a trial that would have exposed even more embarrassing details of her embezzlement. 3 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation and full restitution of the stolen funds. Her mugshot had appeared on every local news station and newspaper, the fallen socialite who stole from her own daughter's memorial fund. The Doherty family had disowned her completely. Randolph had publicly stated that his daughter was dead to him, her actions so disgraceful that they dishonored 4 generations of family legacy. The trust fund forfeiture meant Claire would emerge from prison with nothing, no money, no connections, no future in the social circles she'd valued above her daughter's life. Nicholas's fate had been even more brutal. Unable to repay Victor Santini's organization, he'd lost his gallery, his home, and his reputation. The art world was small and unforgiving. Word of his gambling debts and marital infidelity had spread quickly, destroying his credibility with collectors and artists alike. Dr. Erica Beasley Cabrera had divorced him efficiently, taking half of his remaining assets and leaving him with enough debt to ensure permanent poverty. But Vernon's true masterpiece wasn't the financial or legal destruction. It was the complete social exile he'd orchestrated. Claire and Nicholas had built their affair in the same social circles that now rejected them entirely. Every friend, every business connection, every social outlet they'd valued was permanently closed to them. Vernon had methodically contacted every major family in their social sphere, presenting evidence of Claire's theft from a children's charity and Nicholas's callous attitude toward Emma's death. The recordings of their conversations about using Emma's death as timing for their relationship had particularly horrified people who'd known and loved the little girl. The city's elite operated on reputation and trust. Both Claire and Nicholas were now persona non grata among the only people who'd ever mattered to them. They'd lost not just their money and freedom, but their identity and belonging in the world they'd tried to build together. Vernon had also ensured that their destruction served Emma's memory. The recovered funds had been returned to the legitimate Memorial Fund, which now provided emergency medical training for parents and faster response protocols for pediatric emergencies. The Emma Herring Foundation had already saved 6 children's lives through better emergency recognition and treatment. Standing outside the courthouse, Vernon felt the satisfaction of perfect justice. Claire and Nicholas had used Emma's death as an opportunity for their happiness. Now Emma's memory had become the instrument of their complete destruction. His phone buzzed with a text from Jackie Glass. Subjects have met for coffee downtown. Both appeared distressed. Limited conversation. Shall I continue surveillance? Vernon typed back. No. Mission complete. There was no need to monitor Claire and Nicholas anymore. They were broken, exiled, and facing years of consequences for their betrayal. They would remember Emma's name every day as they lived with the destruction her memory had brought upon them. Vernon walked to his car, passing a flower shop where he purchased a small bouquet of white roses, Emma's favorite. The drive to Greenwood Cemetery took 20 minutes through streets where Claire would never again be welcome at social events, past the gallery district where Nicholas's name was synonymous with disgrace. Emma's grave was peaceful under the autumn trees, her headstone reading simply, Emma Herring, beloved daughter, her memory lives forever. Vernon placed the roses carefully and sat on the nearby bench he'd had installed for his weekly visits. Justice is done, sweetheart, he said quietly. Mommy and her friend learned what happens when people hurt our family. The wind rustled through the leaves, and Vernon felt something that might have been peace. His daughter's death would never be healed, but it had been avenged. Claire and Nicholas had paid for their callous betrayal with everything they'd valued: money, status, freedom, and future. Vernon Herring had kept his promise to himself and to Emma's memory. He never forgave those who betrayed his family, and he never showed mercy to those who used tragedy for their own gain. As he drove home to his empty house, Vernon's phone showed missed calls from Claire's prison number. He deleted them without listening, just as he'd done for months. Claire would serve her full sentence without parole, and when she was released, she'd find a world where Vernon Herring's influence had ensured she'd never again find comfort or belonging. The methodical mind that had built an empire had proven equally effective at orchestrating complete and total revenge. Emma's memory was honored, her legacy was protected, and her betrayers had paid the ultimate price for their callous disregard of an innocent child's life. Vernon Herring slept peacefully that night, knowing that justice had been served and mercy had been appropriately withheld from those who deserved neither forgiveness nor redemption. Some betrayals could never be forgiven, and some losses demanded absolute retribution. Emma's father had ensured that those who'd wronged her would remember her name for the rest of their lives, not with love, but with the bitter taste of consequences that would never fade. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.